Okay, bonjour tout le monde. Good afternoon. Thank you for choosing to be with us late in the day. I know that we're the last thing between you and a cocktail, so we will try to be as entertaining and insightful as we can. My name is Ariane Barassa. I am the head of sustainability and ESG strategy for the TMX Group, which you perhaps know best for being the owner and operator of Canada's leading equity exchanges, the Toronto Stock Exchange, and our junior marketplace, the Venture Exchange. I am responsible for the development and implementation of our ESG and sustainability strategy, and it is a core pillar of our long-term growth strategy, because we believe that sustained value creation in the context of the exchanges is directly related to the success of our issuers on an ongoing basis and as the global economy shifts to a lower carbon future. So to set the stage for the conversation today, I thought we could maybe take a quick look at the composition of the exchanges currently, and how it is sort of representative of the opportunity that the transition represents for Canada's future. If we take the traditional energy sector combined with the mining sector again today, it comprises roughly 30% of the total market capitalization on exchanges. Now, the clean tech and renewable sector only represents 1%. But if we look at the capital raised by that sector in the last year, it actually comes third, right behind mining and utilities. I believe that these capital raise financings on the public markets are actually indicative of how our economy in Canada and our issuers are rather well positioned to take a leading role in the global transition. Canada has the resources and the minerals that the world needs to modernize its energy systems, build electric vehicles, as well as feeding growing populations. We believe that Canada can take a leading role by leveraging its strength. And that is why conversations like today are important to help address current obstacles and hopefully accelerate capital flows toward transition and future-friendly opportunities. So to that end, we've assembled in front of you today a panel of representatives from roughly the whole natural resources value chain, from support to the extraction, technology and project development, innovation, and transportation, to share their perspectives on how we can leverage that right to win for Canada. Now, at this point, I'm going to ask my panelists to briefly introduce themselves. And if you don't mind me picking on you, Janet.
All right. Hello, everyone. We're between you and drinks. I have this beautiful light in my eye. I usually like to make a little bit of eye contact, but I'll be looking out to the light abyss. Jeanette Jackson, CEO of Foresight Canada. We are the largest clean tech innovation and adoption accelerator in Canada. What that means is we're supporting people with really strong ideas to decarbonize all of these incredible sectors, including mining. And then looking at the demand side, we're working with industry to understand what technologies are they looking for and how can we accelerate adoption of those solutions. And of course, none of this happens without a really strong capital stack. So making sure that there's capital at the starting, middle, and end phase of these ventures development.
Bonjour, je voudrais tout d'abord remercier l'organisation pour l'opportunité aujourd'hui de partager ma vision sur l'innovation qui est nécessaire pour permettre la création de batteries vertes ici au Québec et au Canada. J'aime bien dire qu'on ne doit pas juste électrifier le transport, on doit s'assurer de le décarboner. C'est quelque chose que j'ai très à cœur et j'ai le goût de vous en parler. Je persiste à croire que le Canada peut être un leader dans ce domaine-là si on supporte la chaîne de valeur à toutes ces étapes et surtout si on supporte à toutes les étapes du développement, ce qui est nécessaire. Myself, Denis Geoffroy, I'm the Chief Commercialization Officer at Nano1. Nano1 is a tech company that develops processes to make cathode active materials for batteries. I've been myself 30 years in the battery world. So I've been in solid state batteries, cathode material, battery recycling, back to cathodes, involved in some projects, and all that in Quebec, because we've been doing that here in Quebec and Canada for a lot of years. It's not just a recent thing. So, and all of that career was in innovation. So I'm happy to discuss that today with you, because I do know all the challenges linked with innovation, because it's not always fun.
So thank you, everyone. I had planned to ask everyone who was at the Formula One on the weekend, but I can hardly see anybody. So I'm not going to ask you guys to raise your hand, but it was a fantastic event. And if you had a chance to go, good for you. If you're not, please take the opportunity. It's just one of those unique things that Montreal has to offer. And then also just, a couple of words about the organization and the people that put this event together to be able to do something for the 30th time and have it so well organized. So credit to everybody. I'm not sure who's here from the organization, but everyone that works on these things, I know what kind of effort it takes. My name is Sachin. I work for a company by the name of ABB. I assume some of you know it, some of you don't. I've been with ABB for almost 25 years and currently responsible for our mining vertical for North America. At ABB, even after 25 years, I'm still learning what the portfolio is, the kind of things that we can do technically. It never ceases to amaze me how a company which is so much focused on technology can take care of the people, the colleagues, as well as our customers at the same time. So I look forward to the discussion. Yeah.
Well, I'm the one who can raise my hand. I was at the race under the rain and back into the mud to go back to buy Subway by home. So as a Montrealers, welcome everybody into Montreal. My name is Olivier Joyal. I'm the Executive VP for WSP here in Montreal, taking care of our client program, but I'm also the ESG lead for WSP in Canada. So for those who doesn't know, WSP is one of the largest engineering and services and consulting firm in the world, proudly Canadian company. We're 70,000 employees around the globe, and 13,000 of them are in Canada, where I actually belongs to WSP Canada. More than happy to exchange a few ideas and how that we can support the green transition or the energy transition in Canada with everybody in the room today.
Hello, everyone. My name is RJ Steenstra. I'm the president and CEO of Ports Toronto. I'm happy to be here with my esteemed colleagues today to talk about this particular subject. Ports Toronto is the owner and operator of Billy Bishop Toronto City Airport, which is the 9th busiest airport in the country and the 5th busiest transborder airport in the country. Not a lot of people realize how much volume we're putting through that downtown airport. We're also responsible for the Port of Toronto, which is about a mid-sized port for Canada. And then our third business unit is on the recreation side, which the Outer Harbour Marina, which is the largest recreational marina on Lake Ontario. So happy to be here, and thanks very much.
Well, thank you. So let's dig right in. The development of the critical minerals value chain is presented as a generational opportunity for Canada, with the potential for 250,000 jobs and up to $48 billion in terms of added revenue to Canada's GDP on an annual basis. Sachin, I'm going to start picking on you right away. In your view, and in light of these quite staggering numbers, do the current investment levels in Canada match the level of ambition that we have for that sector? And if not, where are the biggest gaps, and what would you attribute these gaps to?
So, in my opinion, if investment is enough, I clearly believe the ambition is not big enough. So for sure, the short answer is absolutely we need more investment. But at the same time, we also have to look at the positives. So there is huge amount of progress, huge amount of work being done in the area of critical minerals. I was at a session yesterday with EDC, which is the Export Development Corporation. There was a session where there were 4, 5, 6 companies, and we were talking about how or what we can do to bring more investment to Canada. So this topic of, is the investment enough? Are we doing enough? The short answer is always going to be no. But at the same time, as I said, there is a lot of good things going on. Other things that I wanted to talk about, that when it comes to development of the critical minerals and what we're doing, you can look back as short as 5 years ago, nobody was talking about it, but everyone is talking about it today. And this whole topic of critical minerals continues to evolve, right? On one hand, we talk about some of the battery minerals, so on and so forth. And then even today, I don't know if you all saw the news or not, the list of critical minerals for Canada has been revised. And now, smartly enough, we have put iron and copper into this list, which is really, without those two elements or without those two minerals, we couldn't go anywhere. So is there enough being done? Definitely not, no. What more can we do? From my perspective, for sure, we need to build on what we already know. We need to invest more in our people. I think we have a lot of knowledge. We are known across the world. And I'm just talking from the mining perspective, but we can also see some of the stuff that is going on the battery side, etc. So we are very well respected. People know, we know how to build, we know how to operate mines. But can we do more? Absolutely. We need to keep investing in our people. We need to make sure that we continue to build on the reputation that we have in terms of some of our standards for ESG. We are doing better. We're learning how to do better with our indigenous communities, et cetera, et cetera. So it's a topic that we can talk about for a long time.
Well, certainly, and building on our strength is certainly something we should be thinking about, and I think a lot of us here are doing that. RJ, would you like to maybe build on what Sachin has explained?
Yeah, absolutely. I think my colleague has said it exactly right, that certainly the ambition is there, but do we now have the incentives that come in behind that ambition? Can we make the right investments? Are we actually adding value into the process? Are we just sending and doing what we traditionally do, which is send raw material out of the country, have someone else make something useful and sell it back to us? So my concern with this is, or my reflection on it is that we need to be much more focused on the incentive side of the equation. And I think about it in terms of transportation. Of course, there's great ambition, in particular in the airport world and in the port world around 2050 and those goals. But how are we going to get there? How do we make sure that we don't impact our businesses while getting there? And what incentives come along with that so we can measure the gaps that are already created? The U.S. is far, far ahead of us in terms of investment that comes along with these kinds of initiatives, and we need to catch up. So that's going to require some significant investment on behalf of private business, but as well as the government.
Thank you. So looking ahead at how we can turn our natural resources into the future-friendly, future-enabling technologies that the world needs. I'm curious about what is often referred to as the valley of death in startups and technology development. And I'm sure there's a number of potential factors at play there. But Janet, I'd be interested in your view on what would you say are the main obstacles to Canadian companies in clean tech, especially in scaling and becoming a commercial success?
Yeah, building on the last question, I do want to highlight, even though Canada has ambition, we need to decide if we want to lead that ambition or follow. And relativity is super important here. The investments being made in China and Chile, it's just, we're not keeping up pace. But back to the important topic of the Valley of Death. So Foresight has supported about 1,200 Canadian clean tech companies over the last 6 years. And by support, that could be programming, access to our innovation challenges, investment introductions, et cetera. And there are definitely some very key indicators around the Valley of Death. Some of it is venture. I think venture specific. So we have a culture in Canada to support everyone. And even though they haven't, really dug in and said, yeah, we've got the best team, the strongest value proposition, and we have third-party validation of this solution, we do tend to string some companies that will never be able to compete along because we have a hard time saying no. And I think a little bit of that discipline amongst ourselves could allow us to really lean in to companies that have solutions that can make it the whole way. Building on that, though, we do have some really incredible companies. Foresight's actually mapped out technology competencies across the whole mining chain, as well as other mining value chains. And we have really strong competitive strengths. Yet we haven't inspired domestic industry to lead on adopting those solutions at scale. And my perspective around the Valley of Death is that it's a customer problem just as much as it is a supplier problem. At some point, we need to again decide, are we going to adopt these technologies at scale, prove it in Canada, make sure that our whole supply chain is decarbonized faster than other countries supplying this, or are we going to follow? So the Valley of Deaths are real. It's both a technology and a market problem. Capital is there, but we really need to show milestones for these companies being met faster, and the market isn't optimized there yet. I'm being politically correct here.
Thank you. So it sounds like we have lots of good ideas, but a bit of an adoption problem. Denis, as a company that has emerged from the Valley of Death, can you comment on that?
Not fully emerged yet, so it's yes, I can comment. I like the comment on leading versus following also, because I'm in the battery world. Like to remind people, everyone says China leads today. It's true. But 20 years ago, Japan was 99% of the sales in the world. Korea then followed, and China followed and took the lead. But there's always a chance for us to be in there. I saw the challenge for mostly the midstream, or for the battery world, I would say, and the midstream where we make the cathode material, is we're in a world where it takes a lot of time to develop things. It's CapEx intensive, and the qualification time with customers is very long. If I want to sell material for automotive, it can be 2-3 years after I've built a commercial plant. So we need to have very, very deep coffers to do that. Another one has been at it, the R&D bit, for 10 years, 2 years of piloting, but we're not yet there at the end. And yes, in Canada, we're very good at supporting R&D, supporting piloting. We're very good also at supporting commercial projects once we have money. So we're good at taking people to the Valley of Death and taking them out of the Valley of Death. There's still a missing link in there. Once you're in it, you kind of have to swallow and try to keep your water close because you need to cross it. And sadly, crossing it can be a challenge because it's R&D, it's innovation. So you can find the things you didn't know. So when they stop you, they slow you down. So that's probably the big challenge for the clean techs right now. So it's having support. And furthermore, right now in the battery world, we have an appetite as a country, as financials, to support the existing things because we want to follow right now. We didn't decide we want to be leaders again. We want to follow. So we see our competitors being financed, getting half of the money they need to build a plant. So it brings in even more challenges. And just take 30 seconds to put an example. 20 years ago, I was with another startup, Fastech Lithium, which made the first LFP, lithium iron phosphate, in the world. Today, China makes 99%. It's a $10 to $20 billion a year business, but we made the first material here in Quebec. But back in the days, I couldn't find any money locally to support us. We had to turn to Europe. So we got money from a German company, then a Swiss company, then a UK company. And we did get $150 to $200 million that we got in here to build plants here, to develop an ecosystem here, and build knowledge here. So for me, but it was sad that we had to turn again to other countries. So we need in Canada to develop local champions. As you said, we need to pick the right ones, but we need to develop local champions and support them throughout the chain so that we develop innovation here and we can become leaders again and not just followers.
Well, taking someone to the Valley of Death sounds like a great date proposition.
Yeah.
Let's maybe shift from that to the operating environment. It's no secret that Canadian corporations have to navigate a pretty complex policy and regulatory patchwork, which is not always conducive to either attracting investment or getting projects off the ground. Session, can you please comment on what you see as the biggest policy obstacle to traditional and critical mineral mining in Canada?
Yeah. So first of all, we have to remember, and if we're talking about mining, really it's not a 100-meter race. It's a marathon. It takes a lot of time, from a discovery all the way to feasibility, so on and so forth. It could take anywhere between 12, 15, 18 years, or even more, who knows. So we have to remember that it's a marathon. So it's really the key to remember. Now, what can we do to improve that? For sure, it would be fantastic if we could find ways to reduce the time it takes to go from a discovery to operate and to produce and so on and so forth. And for sure, it's going to be difficult because we have the responsibility, we have the privilege to respect some of the best and the highest standards that we set for ourselves. Now, that being said, it's not impossible. I mean, our friends south of the border, which have traditionally been even worse than Canada in terms of the amount of time it takes to bring a project online, to bring a mine online. As recently as less than a year ago, they made a decision and they fast-tracked, and they're fast-tracking some of the critical mineral projects. They're fast-tracking some copper projects, they're fast-tracking lithium projects, and so on and so forth. So what will it take? As long as we remember that we don't want to take any shortcuts and create issues that we will be living with for a long time. It will take some will. It will take some decision-making from our leaders, not only, let's say, it's always easy to say that the government has to do this and so on and so forth. We in the supply sector, we in the industrial sector, we also have to take some responsibility. There is history of stuff that has gone on in mining that we don't want to fall back into that kind of history, right? It takes a long time to build that reputation. So for me, the short answer to this question is it will take will. It will take some strong commitment from ourselves on the industry side, as well as from the government. And the examples are there. It can be done.
Thank you. I'm wondering, RJ, could you comment on how that policy patchwork is also affecting the transportation industry?
Yeah, so I've spoken about this a number of times, and I always go back to the idea that, and a challenge that we have is that policy doesn't necessarily match innovation. The intersection of those two don't seem to be aligned very well. So we've got companies that are doing very innovative work. They've got technology, they've got processes that they want to continue moving forward. And unfortunately, regulation and policy tends to not have caught up. And so how do we make sure that those two things intersect? And we do see it a fair amount in the transportation side, whether it's on the port side or on the airport side, where there is a mismatch with what's needed and what we're doing, and certainly what's required in the future. And I would say, we need to continually think about much more holistic vision and strategy for Canada, as opposed to slicing and dicing things down to say we'll do a little bit here, we'll do a little bit there, but we need much more holistic view. And that's not necessarily the entire responsibility of government, but it's certainly a big part of what we believe they need to continually do with support and or leadership coming from private industry. So,
Thank you. I saw you nodding, Jan.
No, I think policy in Canada is a little too much of the how and not the what. And so when you dictate too much of the how, there's no room for innovation and creativity. And just on your point on the time, I mean, if we put this into perspective, if it's going to take 17 years for these new sites to employ and deploy new technology, I mean, we're not getting any GHG benefits for 17 years. And so if we're not serious and allowing things like innovation sandboxes that many ports are trying to do and allow and enable these thought leaders and progressive industry leaders who are trying to say, look, let us try this stuff and see if it works fast, because the valley of death comes when you run out of time. Every month, every year is more and more money. So let's figure out the fast fail model and create these frameworks that allow innovation to be tested. Nano One, I know the founder from one of my clean tech startups. Incredible idea, great work, huge benefits. Like, let's lean in and go. So anyways, I get really excited about this stuff because I'm really passionate about the environment, but there seems to be some obvious opportunities that we're just not taking hold of. And it can get a little frustrating when you really want to see Canada thrive and start exporting more than we import and start capitalizing on this incredible opportunity that's only going to have a period of time for us to take hold of. So sorry.
Thank you. I think we all feel the sense of urgency from those comments. Thank you. Let's maybe shift. We've talked about the challenges in Canada, but let's maybe talk about something a bit more positive. Olivier, I'd like you to maybe speak to what your organization is doing in terms of innovating or differentiating itself in order to be successful in that complex policy and business environment.
Sure. Just before answering that question, I just want to react on something that Sachin just mentioned about the time, right? 16 years, 17 years, 18 years to put a mine in place. Yes, there is the commitment from the government. Yes, there is a desire from the industry also to do things better, to do things right. But we also need to engage with stakeholder and First Nation that will be maybe impacted by any project. So managing stakeholder management is key here to make sure that a project will not take 18 years, maybe 25 years if we're not managing the stakeholder piece properly. So I just want to react to that. At WSP, I think we're quite a leader, right? One of the things it's key here is to make sure that we have 70,000 engineers that's sharing their knowledge. So that's one of the key, right? We need to learn from other countries, from other jurisdictions where they actually do things right. And if we think to continue to do things in silos, then it's not going to work. If you think that something is simple, it's because you don't do enough. You need to push and push on innovation. One of the things that we have been put in place is for the first time we create a position at WSP, a Chief Innovation Officer. He's really there to be the guardian of what we are doing right and what we are doing the best to make sure that we're sharing those knowledges. And this is key. We want to benefit our client around the globe of what's going well and what's not going well in other places to fix things. As an example, New Zealand was badly hit by a weather event last year. We learn from there. We apply what they actually have been put in place to react on the resiliencies of their infrastructure in Canada, because that we're going to be hit more and more about those. So those are the kind of the thing that we're trying to really leverage the savoir-faire, as we say in French, outside of boundaries to make sure that we benefit the entire, let's say, platform or ecosystem that we have.
Denis, as a serial innovator, would you like to comment on that?
Of course. In our case, the way we need to innovate is really not trying to copy what's been done. And first, related to what we were saying a bit earlier, I want to remind everyone that innovating sometimes may mean failure. So we have to make sure that we're not afraid of failure, because if we are, we'll never innovate. We'll just try to do the things the same way. So if a baby walks eventually, it's because it's right. So for me, it's important to keep that in mind. In our case, we're fighting about a behemoth today. China has developed everything related to battery in the last years. They've built the plants already. They were highly subsidized to do that. They're depreciated today. They have low OPEX. They've built vertical supply chain, so they have good control on their price. So what we need to do to bring it here is really avoid copying. They copied us. What they do in China today, in case of LFP, is what we're doing here 20 years ago, but we need to find a new way to do that. We need to innovate. We need to think of different ways, different processes. That's what we did, inventing a process that's simpler to make the material, will be lower OPEX, CAPEX, less water use, less energy use, less waste generated. All of those have a nice impact for ESG, but also a nice impact for dollars. And the cathode material is 40% of the cost of a cell and probably 40% of the environmental impact also. So to reduce it is very important. So that's something that we did focus a lot on. Adding to that is building the supply chains. Right now, all the cathode materials in the world start with metal sulfates. So the sulfates of the metals, those don't exist in North America today. We have to import them. And importing that doesn't make sense. It's very bulky. It's 15% of the metal you want and 85% of things you don't want. So you don't want to do that. You want to develop a process, a way to do that uses the metals, the iron that we have in the ground here, the nickel, the copper, the cobalt, the manganese from the ground here. And a side note, you mentioned critical minerals, hurrah to the government who added iron and phosphorus this week to the list of the critical mineral so that we can support also the lithium iron phosphate business there. So it's very important to get us there because we have those in the ground. It's important to focus there. Two other aspects of innovation we brought, because process is nice, technology is nice, but we also have to have the mindset to change our business ways also to get there. So we have a licensing approach. We don't believe we're going to be the ones who are going to build all the plants that are needed. Our motto is changing the way the world makes battery material, not changing the way Nano One makes them. So we have a licensing approach to spread the CapEx between different people to do that. And furthermore, we have a design once, build many approach. So the idea is, one resources we don't have enough is engineers. If we need to do the full engineering for every cathode plant that needs to be done to support the energy transition, we're going to lack engineers. So we have to make sure that we do it once and we just fine tune for each plant that we build afterwards. So for me, that's the key item here on innovation, to make sure that we have the right approach and we can overcome the challenges that we have.
RJ, I think we saw in the pandemic how critical the transportation sector is. It became really salient to the general population. What kind of innovations are being implemented in transport that are noteworthy?
Well, the way that we look at innovation is really about ideas that add value. So there's certainly the technology component around how people are processed, for example, in an airport, biometrics and all of those elements. So thinking about it in those terms. But certainly through the pandemic, what we realized and what we saw very clearly was just the significance of our value, of our supply chains, and how vulnerable they actually are in the country. And that became very, very clear. So what do we do about that? How do we come together? And again, as I mentioned earlier, just with much more of a broad, holistic national transportation policy around air infrastructure, around port infrastructure, so that we don't create more vulnerabilities going forward. How do we share data between suppliers and users of the port environment? There's a tendency to hold information and not share that information with others, and that is absolutely critical for taking advantage of the opportunities we have, particularly in this area, as well as, of course, supply chain and transportation.
Thank you. Janet, as an incubator for clean tech, what kind of strategies are you advising your growth and startup companies should deploy to maybe avoid the valley of death or, become commercial success?
Yeah, so I like to think we take a pretty practical lens as a quote-unquote accelerator. So I know the term accelerator is used a lot around venture supports. We consider ourselves more of a market accelerator. So when we're talking to ventures, some of the things we lean into, which really start to touch on what you've been speaking of and the adoption side, is the reality is business decisions are made not only with a climate lens. Believe it or not, it does come down to money, whether we want to believe it or not. So what we really work with the companies on is how do you get your solution to cost parity with an incumbent? And do you understand the technologies, processes, and solutions that you're trying to displace that have been embedded into these sectors for 20, 30, 50 years? We're also, to complement that, big fans of, I do agree with what you're saying in terms of creating our own ideas. But if there are some really good ideas that can complement your solution from around the world, I'd much rather save time by pulling those technology solutions into Canada and building the teams and building the infrastructure across the supply chain with the best and brightest from around the world here in Canada. So that's a very macro idealistic lens. But we really do work with the companies to introduce them through the Innovative Clean Tech Network and a whole bunch of other places. Like, you've got this piece of the puzzle. More often than not, you're just 1 or 2% of the total solution. Sometimes it can be bigger, 10, 20%, probably max 25. How can you make sure you're partnering with the best and looking at that holistically? The third piece, which is unfortunate, is we do encourage the ventures to look outside of Canada if there are markets moving faster, because you might not survive. And again, it's not a criticism of any one a case study. There's a couple of really strong cement companies in this country. They've adopted 5, 10 different technology solutions across their own sort of operational chain. They've decarbonized their cement by 30%. They go to government, who's 40% of their market, to try to sell the product, and the product's not selling. So the question is, is industry going to keep investing in these technologies as well if the end user isn't supportive? So really make sure you're clear on who your customer is, can you get to cost parity, and what's your fastest track to commercialization so that you can, get to scale quickly. And if it's not working, it's okay. Recycle that passion into something that may be a better fit for the industry long term.
Thank you. So continuing on that track, you're all very much involved in Canada's value chain. And so I'm wondering, we talked about all of those challenges. What is the aspect of Canada's value chain that is giving you the confidence that we can successfully deliver the critical minerals and the technologies that the world needs to effect that transition to a lower carbon future? Denis, would you like to pick that up and go?
Of course. Listening to you, one thing that comes to mind that's very important is that we, as customers, as people, that we want it to happen. Because yes, there's going to be a cost to it initially. Maybe if we do a full car with a local supply chain, it will be more expensive than a Chinese car day one. If we all go for the cheap one, it may not help. So we need to have a collective willingness to get that. After that, the strength of Canada, I see it threefold. We have the minerals. There are bigger experts than me here about the minerals. We have the experience to them. We have them in the ground. It's not everyone. We have that chance. We have them there. We don't have much of the refining, though. So we have to look at making sure we can refine them, go to the first steps there. And also, we need to make sure that every mineral that we import in a battery or anything else, we recycle. We have to get better at urban mining. I know it's a buzzword, but to make sure that what we import from somewhere else, we keep it here and refine it and reuse it. Second strength is expertise. Again, talking about the battery field, we've been making batteries for a long time in Canada. We have experience here. I talked about LFP. I won't talk about it again, but you probably hear about solid-state batteries. It's the new nirvana. Everyone talks about them. 25 years ago, from Hydro-Quebec, we're making solid-state batteries, prototypes, 1 kilowatt hour here in Quebec. There have been cars made in the 2010s, driven in Paris and in Indianapolis, made with that technology. It was owned by French at the time, again, sold to Europe from the Bolloré Group. But the blue car was a car powered by solid-state batteries made here in Quebec. We have that expertise. We're very good in building buses and others, so we have to build on that expertise. It's very important and to grow it. And the third thing is energy. We have that green energy. The battery world is really very energy-intensive processes, both in cathodes and making the cells. So to greenify the processes by using our green energy is one nice way to do it. But we have to make sure that we use it efficiently. We have to have incentives for people coming here to use as less as they can of that energy to make sure that we use it and can give it to someone else. Today it's a problem. We don't have enough for everyone. So we want to make sure that we can have more projects by using it efficiently. So in my view, I think we have all the ingredients to make the soup, to make it here. I think the challenge is making sure that all the cooks agree on the recipe to do. You mentioned it. It cannot be just Quebec, just Ontario, just Canada. I think we have to think as a semi-global, at least a Western world approach to take over control of our supply chains, but not just think about our own limitation. It doesn't stop at the Ottawa River. We need to work as a team there.
Olivier, it'd be great to hear you on what gives you confidence to keep you going.
I'm really confident, but one of the things that for sure is we need to react and look at the entire industries or what's going on right now with the race of the battery plant. I was looking at the maps of the battery plant in planning or in construction. It's amazing, but we need to have a strong plan in place. A plan, it's an industry plan that looking at the all holistically, as you mentioned earlier, because there will be shortage of people. If we all build those plans at the same time, I don't know where we're going to pick the engineer or the workers in those plants. So we need to have a clear plan in place to make sure that we will be there to support the transition, but correctly. Because at one point, if we don't think that way, there will be a shortage of people, period. I'm confident, but I'm also worried if we're not looking at the whole complex, because there's another aspect of all this is there's a shortage of lithium mining, let's say. Canada is well placed to provide the material, goes into the plant, transformation, goes to the Europe in the automotive plant and on and so forth. But again, we need people. We need to train people. So it's a whole industry need to looking at this this beautiful situation that we are in. Work closely with the academia, the university to develop what's going to look like the future of our industry. How that we can provide what are the real needs into university to make sure that they develop young people, young generation that will work on those plants. So those are the kind of the thing that worried me a bit, but make myself confident where we place in Canada to react to the transition right now.
Janet, I can sense that you might have something to say on this.
Canada does place very well in the top Cleantech 100. So I am a bit doom and gloom on a few things, but I do agree. There's a lot of great things happening. A lot of investors come to Canada because they know the technologies we develop are more competitive than a lot of what's being developed in their own region. We do have a lot of core competencies here. So again, we mapped out a venture to value chain report. I've got a few spaces where I think we can really lead. So extraction, processing, reclamation, materials movement. We have a lot of cool technology companies when it comes to water management. Remember, mining isn't just the land, there's the processing. So we'll run out of water before the planet heats. Water management, tailing, smelting, refining, these are a lot of opportunities for us to scale up so that we can have that attractive value proposition across the entire supply chain and supply all of these technology solutions, to other countries that need it that aren't moving as quickly. On the talent piece, something really interesting. Academia, incredible role, R&D, that new up and comers. I think industry, we have an opportunity to connect government and industry to do more training within industry as opposed to isolated from it. So we should actually use some of the grant funding and large amounts of dollars on training to train people in industry on those applied progressive technologies so that adoption can start to cycle through and you can get more embedded in how these things actually work. And so instead of looking at, we're giving money to this industry player, they already make money. It's like, well, no, we want them to set up infrastructure that doesn't displace their current productivity to train and be more involved in that process from early on. So that I would just love to see that when it comes to the talent pool, because there's only 39 million of us and we have big ambition and huge resources to offer the world. And we want to make sure we're providing the world with as much as possible, but with the less impact on sustaining that longer term.
So a holistic view and planning and leadership sounds like the ingredients that we need. It looks like, Sachin, you might owe me $10 because we are getting to the last question. I just wanted to hear your thoughts about sort of the Inflation Reduction Act era that we live in, where a lot of the capital dedicated to renewables and clean tech is being funneled to the U.S. What kind of potential do you see from continued supply chain integration with our neighbors to the south? Are there any policies or strategies that should be employed to ensure that Canada can capitalize on those opportunities?
Yeah. So that's a good question, and there's a lot of politics behind it, and I'm going to stay. I'm an engineer, then I learned to do some business, etc. So I'm not going to make recommendations or talk about we need to make sure that we keep the relationship strong, we need to sign some of those agreements, etc. So I will leave all of that comment aside in terms of the cards, in terms of the things that we need to do. And the reason we got to the last question is because I was short in my other answers, but that's a different discussion we can have on the side. But outside of some of these politics and politician discussions, what I would say in terms of the cards that we want to play, I think everybody in the panel has mentioned what I wanted to make sure, what we want to make sure is, someone said it, we don't want to just cut our trees or dig our minerals and send them somewhere else. We want to make sure that we are doing the first transformation, the second transformation, and all of those kind of things. So we're doing the value added. So this is important. When you talk about some of these dollars or something like an IRA, etc., the way at least we look at it from my perspective, and I'm going to talk about ABB, we are operating and we're working as units that work across the region. So even though we need to fiscally and we have responsibilities to a country, etc., but when it comes to knowledge, when it comes to execution, risk management, so on and so forth, we are operating as one unit. We're not operating as Canada or Mexico or US for that matter. So the model we have adopted is to operate across the region. Outside of that, I think many of the things have already been said. We want to make sure that we have the people. We want to make sure that we are training the people. And we should not only limit it to the 39 million people that we have. There are lots of people that are available. It's a lot of people that are trained, so on and so forth. So we need to leverage. We should not just say, okay, it has to all come from Canada, etc. So be open-minded, operate without borders, and from my perspective, stay out of politics as much as possible. Yeah.
Thank you. Well, it sounds like we have lots of challenges ahead, but also a lot of really bright spots for Canadian companies and innovators to take a leadership role in the global transition to a low carbon economy. I want to thank all of our panelists for sharing their informed and insights about how Canadian companies can be successful despite those challenges. I also want to thank all of you that attended the session and the conference organization for having me and having us here today. And I hope that you will be wanting to continue the conversation at the reception in a few minutes.